Good morning and welcome. Thank you for dedicating 2 hours of your time to learning about quality assurance and contracting. I am Marion Kelly, the QA officer for the Waters Office of Science and Technology. In the decades of my career, I have worked in several EPA offices, beginning with the Office of Solid Waste, Toxics, and Home here in water. My background in QA began with developing analytical methods under Clean Water Act Part 136. Today, this course will be attended by staff and managers across the agency and several support contractors. I am assisted by General Dynamics contractor Elizabeth Benjamin, who will keep me on track and will be calling out the questions you submit. I encourage your questions so that you will get the most out of the information I'm about to provide. You have received the course PowerPoint earlier. I will go through them today. This training is being recorded and placed on the Office of Water Quality Assurance SharePoint site. While the training has been designed for OW staff, the concepts apply to all offices that generate, analyze, or otherwise use environmental information. Please type your question in the question box on your screen, and we will respond periodically as designed on the slides. All the attendees will be muted for the duration of this presentation. If you just registered, the slides and handouts are available in the handout section of your screen. Lastly, I have a landline that I cannot mute. I will do my best to terminate the calls quickly. I am also letting you know that there are 2 quizzes in this training, and because you are muted, I have a strategy for dealing with that, but I'd like to begin the training and we'll handle the quizzes as they come up. Thanks so much. So, welcome to today's training. I am a contracting officer representative, not only a quality assurance officer, and I manage work assignments on behalf of the Office of Water. I've been in the QAO role for more than 40 years and have more than 35 years experience as a core. The training I'll be presenting today is designed to reflect OW's approach for implementing QA in OW-funded contract activities. OW's approach is consistent with broader EPA requirements, but has been tailored to reflect our unique program needs and lessons that I and others have learned over many years of implementation. We have a lot of information to cover today. I'll begin with some basic administrative items aimed at ensuring that you belong in this training, and if so, understand why you're here, know where to find our course reference materials, and how to obtain course credit. I will provide a brief overview of key aspects of our quality system that relate to QA and contracts. Then I'll build on that refresher to briefly highlight some of the mandates that our contract-related QA requirements are designed to address. I'll also summarize the types of QA activities and requirements that occur during the contract development, solicitation, and award processes so that you understand what is in place for you to build on when you are asked to manage a work assignment, delivery order, or task order under a contract. Once we've covered this groundwork, I'll get into the meat of this presentation. I'll discuss your roles and responsibilities for determining and documenting QA requirements that your contractor must address, reviewing the contractor's QA planning documentation, and ensuring the contractor complies with those requirements. I'll also tell you about procedures, forms, and other tools we have in place to help you fulfill these responsibilities. Finally, I'll take a few minutes at the end of the course to summarize key takeaway messages, field any additional questions, point you to our course survey, and point you towards additional sources of information. Please note that this training is designed for those contracting officer representatives cores who are managing work assignments or equivalent under existing contracts. In addition to work assignments, this includes cores who are managing delivery orders and task orders. Separate training is available for OW staff who are involved in contract acquisitions, which include any OW staff involved in activities related to planning a new OW contract, planning for a follow-on, participating in a technical review panel, and serving as a contract level core for an existing new or follow-on contract. I will touch on those aspects during this training today as well. Before going any further, I would like to emphasize that this course focuses only on QA-related responsibilities, procedures, tools, and strategies. It does not address other core-related requirements, processes, and tools that are the subject of other trainings and outside of my purview. I would also like to note that this course applies to any and all work assignments, delivery orders, and task orders that involve activities that involve the generation, collection, compilation, analysis, or other use of environmental data or information. And note that this does not just include the generation and use of new data, it also includes the use of existing data. Activities or data used to characterize environmental systems, including ecological systems and the health of human populations, and activities for the design, development, or operation of environmental technology. In essence, these are our mission activities that we perform in the Office of Water. So I have supporting materials, and those are in the handout folder, and also what I sent by a separate email last week. There's a copy of today's presentation. There's what I call a QA cheat sheet. I have EPA's QA-related regulations as a reference. There's a table that explains the quality assurance surveillance plan versus what a QAP is. I provided an example quality assurance surveillance plan, OWQA review form for projects, an EPA organizational competency policy for contractors, and the FAQs that go with that, tips for reviewing quality assurance project plans, and modified QAP elements for existing data projects, for method development and validation products, and also how to track your training on the OWQA SharePoint site. The OW tracking your training is open to Office of Water staff only. We will be providing certificates to everyone who attends this course, however, so that you can provide that certificate for FAEDIS and I provide 2 CLPs for this course for your core certification. So this slide goes through how you track your training if you're an OW personnel. That's how you will obtain credit for having completed this training. You go to the OWQA SharePoint site and record your participation in today's course. So why does this matter? Why does QA and contracting matter? As a government agency, the quality of EPA's activities is always under the microscope, and the public expects our actions to be based on both sound science and high quality. Doubt about either our science or our quality can have devastating consequences, including litigation, congressional hearings, or even loss of funding for critical programs. I know you're all doing good work in the agency, and I wouldn't suggest otherwise. Instead, I want to show you how to apply our quality system to the contracts activities you manage for OW. Please note that the agency currently spends billions per year on contract activities, and the public does not distinguish between our own work and the work of our contractors. Therefore, it is imperative that we, as cores, hold contractor organizations to our expectations of quality. Our quality system, as this slide shows, is designed to address and complement a large and diverse set of drivers and mandates, many but not all of which are shown on this slide. Notably, these include the National Consensus Standard for Environmental Programs known as ASQ ANSI E4 2014, which forms the basis of EPA's quality system. A suite of federal laws, federal regulations, and executive orders pertaining to a wide variety of topics that are relevant to our work and the way we approach it, including our use of contract support. In the next few slides, we'll review several of the key mandates and drivers that govern how we manage quality for our contracted services and supplies. EPA's contract acquisition and management procedures in the Code of Federal Regulations are designed to provide a guidepost for how we do our work. EPA's contract acquisition and management procedures are designed to comply with the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, that is known as the Federal Acquisition Regulations, or FAR, and these federal acquisition regulations appear in Title 48 of the CFR. The FAR describes requirements for nearly every aspect of government contracting, including quality assurance. In the next few slides, I'll briefly highlight the key FAR requirements concerning quality assurance, and then show you how EPA has addressed them. I just want you to understand about the practices and responsibilities we'll be discussing shortly, and why they are there, and they are there for a reason. Okay. First, note that as a matter of federal policy, federal agencies are required to ensure that contractors deliver services and supplies of appropriate quality. 48 CFR 46.102 requires agencies to ensure contracts include inspection and other quality requirements needed to protect government interests, contractor services or supplies meet contract requirements, and that government contract quality assurance is performed before acceptance. The policy requirements in FAR Part 102 are supported by higher level contract quality requirements specified in FAR Part 46.204-2, which require agencies to use higher level quality standards for complex or critical items and services, and allow each agency to select higher level quality standards to meet that requirement. In EPA, we have selected the American Society for Quality, ASQ, and American National Standards Institute, ANSI, standard for quality management systems pertaining to environmental information and technology. And this standard is numbered and known as E4 2014. FAR Section 46.4 requires EPA and other federal agencies to perform quality assurance when and where needed to confirm that the contracted services or supplies conform to specified requirements. FAR 46.4 also requires us to develop something known as a QA surveillance plan, or QASP, when we develop our requirements for each contract. This QASP describes how and when we'll conduct surveillance activities to ensure the contractors meeting our requirements. I'll talk a bit more about a quality assurance surveillance plans in parts 4 and 5 of this training when we discuss pre-award QA activities and your post-award quality assurance responsibilities when managing contract work assignments, task orders, and delivery orders. FAR Part 52.24611 contains actual language for agencies to include and use in their contracts to implement the higher level contract requirements. Finally, I want to emphasize that they are the basis of EPA's requirements for QA and contracts and are cited in our EPA Acquisition Guide, or EPAG, which I'll discuss shortly. As I mentioned previously, EPA's quality system is based on the American National Standard for Environmental Programs, known as ASQ ANSI E4 2014. The important points here are that our system is based on a widely accepted consensus standard, and we require our contractor organizations to have quality systems that also are consistent with the requirements in this standard. ASQ ANSI E4 2014 includes a lot of requirements that will look familiar to anyone who has read EPA's agency-wide quality policies, procedures, and requirements, or are familiar with OW's quality management plan, which documents how OW applies those requirements in our own quality system. The main requirement I want to point out in this training is that E4 specifically requires the use of quality management plans and quality assurance project plans. Hopefully you're all familiar with these documents, but I'll be discussing them in more detail later in the context of how we implement them in our contracts and your responsibilities for making that happen. If you are a core or have been one in the last few years or want to be a core, you should be familiar with the EPA's acquisition guide, commonly referred to as the EPAG, through your core training. However, the core training often overlooks those aspects of the EPAG that focus on quality assurance, so I'm going to take a few moments to identify those areas for you. The first two areas are chapters 7 and 15 of the EPAG 46 of the EPAG, chapters 7 and 15, which focus on acquisition planning and evaluation of bids and proposals. The important point for this course is that these require consideration of contract level QA requirements during the planning and award phases, and that these requirements include our plans for asking the contractors to document their QA strategies and document how we intend to oversee the quality of their work. EPAG Chapter 46 is focused specifically on quality assurance. So I'll take a few minutes to discuss information in that chapter that pertains to core responsibilities when managing work tasked under an existing contract. EPA Acquisition Guide, Chapter 46, is important for you to have an understanding of. It is the guidance for use of higher level contract quality clause at EPAG 46.2.1. 46.2.1.1 describes the purpose of this chapter as being to establish guidance for program personnel and contracting officers regarding the evaluation of solicitations and contracts, including simplified acquisitions for inclusion of higher level contract quality requirements. In addition, it supplements the procedures and requirements contained in FAR 46.202-4 by providing instructions for the use of the Quality Assurance Review Form to document and communicate the quality assurance requirements for inclusion in FAR Clause 52.246-11, Higher Level Contract Quality Requirement. FAR Clause 52.246-11 allows acceptable quality standards to be tailored to meet specific agency needs. In section 46.2.1.4, it defines the types of work that are subject to the higher level quality requirement. Specifically, this includes any contract that involves any activities related to the generation, collection, use, or reporting of environmental data or information, or the design, construction, or operation of environmental technologies. In other words, if the contract involves work that falls within the scope of our quality systems, the higher level quality requirement is going to apply. Section 46.2.5.1 in EPAG describes the Office of Acquisition Management's requirements concerning quality assurance review forms, or QARFs. Note that they are required for nearly all contract actions, including solicitation of new contracts, issuance of work assignments, task orders, or delivery orders under existing contracts, and modifications to any of those types of vehicles that result in changes to the nature of the work being performed. The only exceptions allowed are modifications that do not impact the nature of the work to be performed, and these include such changes such as to the period of performance and changes such as increased ceilings to accommodate increased workloads that don't affect the type of work being performed. Finally, Section 46.2.5.1 references the Office of Acquisition Management's version of the Quality Assurance Review Form, which is a 4-page form that can be found in Appendix 46.2.1D of this section. It allows organizations to use alternate quality assurance review formats, provided these formats are pre-approved by the agency's Enterprise Quality Management Division, or EQMD. The Office of Water's QMP has approved QORFs in use in OW, and I have provided as one of the handouts a fillable quality assurance review form for continued use. If you have not already done so, I encourage you to look at EPAG sections 46.2, 0.5, 0.3, 0.1, and its supporting appendix 46.2.1-A. They are not long, and they provide step-by-step instructions for cores to follow when preparing quality assurance review forms. In telling you this, I do want to note that Appendix 46.2.1-A includes both pre-award and post-award step-by-step instructions. There are also instructions for contracting officers as well. This training is focused on the post-award steps primarily. Hopefully, I've succeeded in convincing you that you really do need to take QA seriously when managing contractor activities. If for no other reason, you're obligated to comply with federal regulations, EPA policies, and OW's quality system. If that's not enough, take a few moments to consider how badly things can go wrong. All of the images shown on this slide are relatively recent examples of embarrassing problems that could have been avoided with better quality assurance practices. Okay, time for questions.
As a reminder, folks, if you have any questions at any time during the presentation training, please type them in the question box and we will read them out during our question time. Trinky, there are no questions at this time.
Okay, there's going to be a lot of material that I'm going to throw at you during this training. And I understand that you may need to think about some of it before you ask a question, but I just want to tell you that there are no questions that you could ask that are irrelevant. I'm here to help you understand about the importance of quality assurance in contracting, so please don't hesitate to ask any questions. Okay, with that, part 3. Now that we have briefly explored some of the specific QA mandates that we have to address when contracting out support for our environmental programs and mission activities, let's review some fundamental terminology and the scope of our quality system and how it relates to our contracts. For those of you who've taken the previous training last Tuesday, I am covering much of the same ground, and it might be a refresher for you as well as for others on this training webinar. I'm going to begin with a brief discussion of some basic terminology, starting with what we mean when we talk about quality. Quality is the degree to which a set of inherent existing characteristics fulfills requirements. And that comes from ISO 9000, the definition, because it's simple, it accurately emphasizes that quality is measured by how well it conforms to requirements, whatever those are stated to be. And ISO is an international consensus standards organization that folks depend upon. There is quality, like beauty, lies in the eye of the beholder. There is no magic criterion that exists for determining when something is of the quality needed for your activity in your contracting work. It depends on the needs of the stakeholders that will use the product or service. And there seems to be nearly as many definitions of quality as there are opinions about what it looks like. Quality assurance, on the other hand, though QA and QC are often used interchangeably, they are related but different concepts. The definition of quality assurance shown on this slide includes management activities involving planning, implementation, assessment, reporting, and quality improvement to ensure that a process, item, or service is of the type and quality needed and expected. Notice the focus on providing confidence. That's the assuring part of it. Management activities that will be done to ensure that the required quality will be delivered. That's the quality part of it. QA is a management control to ensure that managers will be able to rely on the information for decision making. Always keep that in mind. Whereas quality assurance focused on management activities that are taken to assure quality requirements will be met, quality control, on the other hand, focuses on the technical activities that are actually done to fulfill those requirements. This is the part of QA where someone checks the work or process to either confirm that it is meeting requirements or identify defects that don't meet requirements. And defects could be deviations or gaps in data. If you look at the QC definition closely, you'll see that the measurements are done against defined standards. As you'll see in the next couple of slides, defining those standards is part of the QA planning process. Perhaps the easiest way to think of the difference between QA and QC is that QA is proactive, process-oriented, and focuses on preventing defects or deviations or gaps. Quality control is more reactive, product-oriented, and focused on identifying those deviations or gaps that have occurred. For those of us who use the terms QA and QC interchangeably without consequence, you're probably okay. The EPA QA police are not going to come for you, and I'm leaving in a couple of weeks, so you can count me out. In our organization and many of our partner organizations, QA and QC functions are usually performed by the same staff. That is not true in all organizations, and some organizations have QC departments full of people who spend their days testing for defects, and separate QA departments full of people who spend their days defining performance measures and criteria, conducting audits, and other QA-related activities. So this slide presents some good information on comparing what is QA versus what is QC. I urge you to look at this after this training so that you have an understanding of the differences between the two. So I have provided several examples of QA versus QC strategies, and I'll go through a couple of them. So an example for a QA strategy is documenting measurable objectives or data quality indicators such as precision, bias, completeness, representativeness, accuracy, et cetera, acceptance criteria, and specific strategies in QA plans that will be used to ensure project data will support project objectives. Documenting project-specific procedures such as SOPs, methods, guidance, maps, etc., photographs that describe what, where, how, and when to measure is a good strategy, are good strategies to include. And these also include templates, forms, and checklists to require. Documenting data management, data reduction, analysis, and management procedures to control errors and data integrity is a necessary strategy for quality assurance planning. So for examples of QC strategies, most likely many of you are familiar with reviewing field and laboratory records to verify that measurement data generated in the field and in the laboratory reflect the required locations, procedures, calculations, and frequencies. Collecting QC measurements for each data quality indicator to determine if specified acceptance criteria are met is necessary. Verifying that staff have required experience or other strategies. Examining a final project data set to verify it accurately reflects project results is another example of quality control. Our quality system is based on the quality cycle made popular by W.E. Deming, the father of modern quality control principles. The plan portion is the foundation of everything. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, write everything in your plan that you think is necessary in order to have good quality assurance and quality control documentation. The do segment is implement the plan as prescribed. If you encounter unforeseen circumstances that prevent it, go back and revise the plan if needed, and then get it approved and document your work. The check phase can be anything from routine oversight of your contractor or grantee to reviewing data, to beta testing software, to conducting audits, or just reviewing a final deliverable. Document your findings. It is critical that our decisions be based on data of known quality. And then the final section is act. Encourage improvement. Don't make folks afraid to report problems. If results indicate problems, investigate the causes and implement corrective actions when needed, and document any changes needed. If corrective actions involve changing the plan, the cycle begins anew. Revise the plan, implement it, check how it's working, and document, document, document. If you do not have documentation to support the quality assurance activities that you perform, you might as well not have even written the plan. You need to have the documentation. So, the EPA and OW quality system applies to anything involving the generation or use of environmental information. Nearly everything we touch in the Office of Water falls under these definitions. In other words, if you are doing an agency activity involving environmental information, I'm afraid it falls under this quality system scope. If you do not follow the quality system, you run the risk of not being able to use or make the defense of your work that management requires and is accustomed to, and what is expected. Environmental information includes any measurements or information that describe environmental processes, location or conditions, ecological or health effects and consequences, or the performance of environmental technology, and includes models, databases, IT systems, and literature, software that impacts any environmental data, and analysis of any kind, including economic analysis and statistical analysis. You may hear people refer to the term environmental data, which was used when our quality policy was issued, when we were doing field activities for sampling and analysis work. Although they're synonymous, environmental information is now the preferred term of art. Have the same definitions, but reduces any misunderstanding that the policy only applied to data collected in a field or lab, and reflects increased reliance on IT systems to manage, analyze, and report data, and addresses new emphasis on existing information. And it must be consistent with a similar move by the national consensus standard that EPA's quality system is based on environmental measurements. Okay, the scope includes both primary and existing information. Primary data is collected by your organization or under its direction for a specific purpose associated with the decision at hand. Existing data is EPA's current terminology for data being used from a secondary or tertiary source. It is, for our use, it is basically repurposing information that was collected for another purpose or use. Existing data can be of excellent quality in terms of its original use, possibly in terms of your use. The issue for quality assurance is that you need to verify it is of sufficient quality and quantity for your use. Regardless of whether your data is primary or existing data, you need to plan for and document your quality assurance and quality control strategies to ensure transparency, reproducibility, and objectivity. You may have noted that the definition of environmental information includes the phrase environmental technology. It's an all-inclusive term used to describe pollution control devices and systems, waste treatment processes and storage facilities, site remediation technologies and their components that may be used to remove pollutants or contaminants from or prevent them from entering the environment. Examples include wet scrubbers for air, soil washing for soil, granulated activated carbon units for water, and filtration for air and water. Usually this term applies to hardware-based systems. However, it also applies to methods or techniques used for pollution prevention, pollution reduction, or containment of contamination to prevent further movement of the contaminants, such as capping, solidification, or vitrification, and biological treatment. So fundamental to the quality system is the quality management plan. It documents an organization's policies on how the organization will plan, implement, and assess its quality system. It focuses on the organization to which the plan applies. This can be at whatever level is appropriate. For example, the Office of Water uses a single quality management plan that applies to its entire office. Some other EPA offices have decided that quality management plans need to be at the sub-office level or program level or laboratory level. Similarly, a large contractor may develop different quality management plans for different groups within their organization, whereas a smaller contractor may have a single quality management plan that applies to the entire organization. In contracting, for OW, in general, we require that a contractor's quality management plan relate to the PWS activities that we are asking a contractor to perform. A document known as EPA Requirements for Quality Management Plan and referenced as EPA QAR2 describes the elements that contractors must address when preparing quality management plans. Another important aspect of EPA's quality system are quality assurance project plans. Quality management plans are supported by quality assurance project plans, or QAPs. that describe the specific quality assurance and quality control strategies for a particular project or service. QAPs are for projects. Quality management plans are for organizations. QAPs focus on the project to which it applies. The QAP can be written by EPA, and contractors can be required to adhere to it. Or the QAP can be written by the contractor to describe how they will address the project and how it will be documented. A document known as EPA Requirements for QA Project Plans and referenced as EPA QA-R5 describes the elements that contractors must address when preparing quality assurance project plans. These requirements are consistent with those specified for EPA organizations in Chapter 5 of EPA's Environmental Data Quality Manual, CIO 2105-P-01-0. And I must say that this is currently under review in the agency and is undergoing revision. EPA also has published several guidance documents known as the G5 series. G stands for guidance, to assist organizations in preparing quality assurance project plans. These include guidance EPA QA-G5 for QA project plans, G-5S, guidance on choosing a sampling design for environmental data collection, G5G, guidance for geospatial data QAPs, G5M for guidance on modeling QAPs. A QMP serves as an umbrella document that describes the quality management system for an organization. Each project that the organization performs is supported by a QAP that falls under the organization's quality management umbrella. Like EPA, our contractors are required to prepare a quality management plan. A contractor organization may operate several work assignments, tasks, and projects managing environmental data that are supported by quality assurance project plans. Please remember, all contractor work involving environmental data must be supported by a quality management plan and an approved quality assurance project plan before the contractor begins work. This means before any billable hours can be billed for that project or activity. So here's a quality assurance surveillance plan, and it is required for all performance-based service acquisitions. I have provided a sample quality assurance surveillance plan in your handouts. Please look at it at your leisure, but understand a quality assurance surveillance plan is written by the contract level core, and it is not, and I repeat, not a substitute for a quality assurance project plan. A quality assurance surveillance plan is a government developed and applied plan, and a QAP is a contractor developed and applied project plan. The quality assurance surveillance plan is simply an oversight mechanism developed and used by the EPA Corps to ensure that the contractor delivers required services. It defines the procedures and metrics the government will use to evaluate contractor performance. And a QAP is a completely different requirement that is needed to support EPA's quality system requirements. The quality assurance project plan is usually developed and applied by the contractor and is focused on the quality of the services provided at the project level. It defines the management roles, responsibilities, and procedures the contractor will take to meet the quality standards set forth in the contract or the work assignment task order or delivery order. FAR 37.102 speaks to performance-based service acquisitions, PBSAs, and PBSA is the preferred method for contracting. A performance work statement describes the services in terms of measurable outcomes and supports PBSAs. The PWS define the outcome, and the statement of work define the procedures. In most cases, the preferred approach for acquiring services is to use a performance-based approach, which involves carefully describing the outcomes that you want, and the services are described, excuse me, in a performance work statement and are supported by a quality assurance surveillance plan that describes specific measures you will use to be sure the contractor delivers the outcome you asked for. Many people use the term statement of work when they really mean a performance work statement, a PWS. Both terms are valid, but they mean different things. Statements of work are used when the contract is not performance-based. Statements of work apply to contracts that specify exactly what type of services are required and exactly how those services are to be performed. The car waxing example shown on this slide illustrates the difference. This course is not intended to tell you what to use when, as that is the focus of basic contract training. For this training, you simply need to remember the difference and remember that QA surveillance plans must be developed to support performance-based contracts that use a performance work statement. This slide is intended to show you how important it is to provide detail when you're setting up either the statement of work or your PWS for your contract. If you don't provide sufficient detail, the contractor is not in position to really understand what you need, and they may not properly estimate the costs. When that happens, you may find that you don't get the services you asked for or the quality of services you need. The left-hand column on this slide shows a description of required services, starting with limited detail at the top and moving toward the bottom. The right column shows the problems with each of the limited detail versions. What this slide points out is that specificity, rather than leaving things to interpretation, is the preferred route when you are preparing a performance work statement. Our quality system embraces something known as the graded approach to quality management. Basically, this is a practical philosophy that the cost of quality management strategies, including documentation of those strategies, should be commensurate with the nature of the work being done. For example, a project that requires a significant financial investment is likely to require more in-depth QA/QC strategies and documentation to protect the investment than with a small, inexpensive project. Now, that's a generalization that may not necessarily always follow through. You may have a work assignment or task order for a small amount of money, say $10,000, but it may be critical to how you are going to use the information in a regulation or other activity that you are engaged in. So again, that is a generalization. Likewise, more extensive QA is needed for projects with higher decision error consequences than those with lower ones. Just ask the people who chose to skimp on QA during the Deepwater Horizon drilling. The challenge in implementing the graded approach is that it is an easily abused concept. Again, think Deepwater Horizon. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone that the quality system is not optional. Each EPA organization is required to track and report on compliance with the quality policy and procedures. OW uses a tracking system developed by the Great Lakes National Program Offices to track and store our quality management plans, our quality assurance project plans, our quality assurance review forms, and related documents, such as our task orders and work assignments. We use our OWQA SharePoint site to track our QA training, audits and assessments, and corrective actions. Throughout the course of the year, your quality assurance coordinator may ask you for information to fill in gaps or obtain clarification regarding items in one of these systems. Please respond to such requests promptly and understand that the quality assurance question is not trying to burden you. They are simply trying to comply with management requirements concerning QA reporting. And what is becoming evident to me is that the revised policy and procedure that will be going through agency review shortly will require annual reporting on the metrics that will be gleaned from QA track for the Office of Water. Okay, here's the first quiz. So for this, I'm going to read the question, stop a moment, let you think about it, and then I'm going to read the answer. You might want to take a pen and pencil and just jot down whether you think these statements are true or false. Okay, true or false? EPA is the only federal agency that specifies QA in contracting. This is false. 48 CFR Part 46 specifies QA requirements that apply to all federal agencies. Each agency establishes its own procedures for implementing QA requirements. Next question. EPA QA requirements only apply to sampling and analysis activities. The answer to question 2 is false. Historically, EPA's quality system was focused on environmental data operations, which included but were not limited to sampling and analysis activities. With the issuance of EPA Order 2106 in 2008, EPA's quality system requirements applied to all products and services. Examples of activities covered by EPA's quality system include, but are not limited to, measurements, economic data, models, IT systems, and output, statistical analysis, literature searches, reports, training, and outreach. Question number 3. Quality management plans describe project-level QA and QC strategies. True or false? The answer to question 3 is false. QMPs describe QA strategies that apply to all projects within an organization. QAPs describe QA and QC strategies for individual projects. Last question. A QA surveillance plan is not a substitute for a QA project plan. True or false? The answer to question 4 is true. A QA surveillance plan is an oversight mechanism developed and used by the EPA Corps to ensure the contractor delivers the required services. It defines the procedures and metrics the government will use to evaluate contractor performance. A QAP is a completely different requirement that is needed to support EPA's quality system requirements, and the QAP is usually developed and applied by the contractor and is focused on the quality of the services provided at the project level. It defines the management roles, responsibilities, and procedures the contractor will take to meet the quality standards set forth in the contract, work assignment, task order, or delivery order. Any questions?
We have one question, and it says, Is it true that QAPs followed by contractors can be a QAP developed based on other than R5? In other words, can QAP equivalents be utilized by contractors, or are contractors bound by QAPs developed using R5?
The answer is not necessarily. We have found in the Office of Water that, especially with existing information projects, that the elements in R5 don't always correspond with the thought processes for existing information for the QA strategies or the quality control strategies. So in your handouts today, I have provided a table for existing information that gives the contractor guidance on how they could prepare a QAP using existing information that doesn't exactly follow the R5 requirements. What it does follow is the R5 is divided into 4 sections: A, B, C, and D. A are the general sections, and for existing information, that general section would apply. B, for existing information, you would tailor that information for what you're looking for. C is how you're going to assess it, and D is your findings and reports. So I've also included another example for it's a modified QAP design in the handouts that you can also use. We have found that when dealing with some engineering and scientific work, that when applying the scientific methodology, that you may accomplish the same end result with a QAP, but when doing so, we often ask that you provide a crosswalk between any replacement or equivalent document to R5, so that we know that you've addressed similar activities that are required by R5. I hope that helps. Any other questions?
No further questions.
Okay, moving right along here. That was a good question, by the way. Okay, now that we've discussed the importance of QA in our contracting activities and reviewed some fundamental concepts that you'll need to understand, let's talk specifically about how we implement QA in our contracts. I'll begin by briefly discussing the QA-related activities that should have happened during the contract solicitation and award phase, so that you'll have an understanding of the degree we try to set up our contracts for success in implementing the quality assurance you require in your mission activities. There's a lot of material on this slide, but the important take-home message is that we incorporate quality assurance into our contracts through the entire contracting process, beginning with the solicitation process, proposal review and selection, and contract award and implementation. Each yellow bubble in the slide is a point at which QA is addressed in the contract process. Again, as you can see, I've divided the process into 3 phases: solicitation, award, and post-award implementation. Although this training is focused on the last of these 3 phases, you'll need to understand what happens in the first 2 phases to understand what should be in place by the time you are ready to manage activities under the awarded contract as a core, as a tow core or wake core. The point here is to explain the foundation that you'll be working with as you issue and manage work assignments, task orders, and delivery orders. Our goal is to set you up for success with your project. This graphic shows the components in the first block of the previous slide. Again, note that the green bubbles refer to places in which QA needs are addressed during the process. In this case, it includes 3 of the things we discussed in part 2 of this training: QA review forms, the higher level contract quality clause, and QA surveillance plans. The bubble on the lower right-hand side is really not exactly what happens nowadays in the contract solicitation process. It doesn't reflect correctly the evaluation process established in the EPAG. There is no scoring, only evaluation criteria for QA documentation. Okay. The Office of Acquisition Management Procurement Operations Divisions for water, it is CPOD in Cincinnati. In the planning process, I may have missed a slide, excuse me. There we go. Okay, this is better. I'm back on track. On this slide, we're going to talk about the program office QA activities during acquisition planning. The acquisition planning package is a lengthy collection of documents that are prepared by the program office responsible for the contract solicitation. There are a number of documents that address a wide range of procurement-related material, but only a subset of those materials are relevant to today's training. These include the PWS or SOW that describes the technical work to be performed, the scope and complexity of this technical work, along with the size of the contract, drives the QA strategies that will be used for the contract. A QA surveillance plan request that describes how the EPA program office plans to evaluate the awarded contractor's performance under the PWS requirements. A QA review form or QARF is prepared that documents the pre-award and post-award quality management strategies that the program office wants to use for the contract. There is a collection of technical evaluation criteria. In OW, nearly all of our contracts require technical evaluation criteria concerning each offeror's quality system. There is a suite of instructions that explains what the offerors must submit in order to be evaluated equally against the technical evaluation criteria established for the solicitation. Note that the QA requirements in the PWS, the Quality Assurance Review Form, the technical evaluation criteria, and the proposal instructions must be consistent with one another. Their content will be concluded in what is called a request for proposal, and higher level contracting clauses, L and M, and the PWS will be provided. The Office of Water has developed standard boilerplate language to standardize and streamline the process, and it has been used regularly in our solicitations. It is available on the OWQA SharePoint site, and you must consult with your quality assurance manager if you have questions and before making any changes. Getting this right is so important that the quality assurance coordinator reviews the content, but does not sign off on the quality assurance review form until everyone else, including legal review, has finished their review. The program office submits their advanced planning package to their assigned pod, and in our case, it's to CPOD in Cincinnati. Each region and national program office is assigned to one pod, and OW is assigned to Cincinnati division known as CPOD. CPOD reviews the material it receives from the program office over a period of months, works with the program office to obtain clarification and revised language as needed to reflect CPOD's requirements, and it requests the Office of General Counsel review of the package and coordinates with the program office to revise the package as needed. And it translates the contents of the advanced planning package into a request for proposal or RFP. The RFP includes the final version of the program office's performance work standard statement, quality assurance surveillance plan, technical evaluation criteria, and technical proposal instructions, as well as a version of the standard higher level contract quality clause that has been tailored to reflect the specific requirements identified by the program office on the quality assurance review form. When completing the pre-award quality assurance review form, the program office has to consider multiple options concerning the pre and post-award QA documentation the contractor will be required to provide at solicitation, and a pre-award approach for evaluating this documentation. These options depend on the contract scope, complexity, and size. For example, the organization must include their QA representative as a member of the technical evaluation panel for all contracts that are valued at more than $650,000 and involve work that falls within the scope of the quality policy. Similarly, any contracts that fall within the scope of the quality policy must be supported by a quality management plan that documents the contractor's quality system and a quality assurance project plan that describes project-level approaches to ensuring the quality of the services and deliverables they'll provide. As we'll see in the next slide, however, the timing and specific format of the documentation can vary. This slide shows QA options for 3 different contract scenarios. Note that regardless of the type of work to be performed, all of our strategies involve requiring auditors to submit a quality management plan prior to award as part of their proposal, 1 or more quality assurance project plans to support project work. The rows highlighted in blue reflect the most common situations in OW. The first blue row reflects contracts for multiple projects that all involve the same activities. For example, the Office of Science and Technology may issue an engineering contract to support multiple effluent guideline studies, where each study involves similar types of activities, but those activities are focused on different industrial categories. Likewise, the Office of Groundwater and Drinking Water may issue a contract to help evaluate candidate chemicals for regulation under the Safe Drinking Water Act. In this case, the specific chemicals may vary, but the evaluation activities are similar. The second blue row reflects contracts that support multiple projects where the type of work performed varies widely among the projects. This is a graphic showing the details of the second step of the 3 major phases I told you about in the contract acquisition implementation process. Again, the green balloons on this slide reflect points at which QA requirements are addressed in the contract acquisition process. Again, the point is to shed light on the QA documentation that is in place before and immediately after the contract award process on the next slide. At a minimum, a quality management plan should be in place by or immediately after award. And depending on the type of work being performed, a contract level QAP or PQAP also may be in place. These can be supplemented with additional detail needed for specific projects. You need to know what is in place in order to make informed decisions about additional quality assurance documentation needed for your work assignment, task order, or delivery order. Okay, I covered a lot in this on solicitation, review of proposals, and implementation, and the QA process that is involved. So are there any questions, or do you need any clarifications?
There's no specific questions. We did get a comment from someone who said their audio was going off and on, and I'm wondering if anyone else is having an issue with audio. If someone could either quickly type in or Okay, so we did get that there were several times. So we did get that audio went in and out a couple times. Some folks say it's fine now, just so want to let you know about that. Some folks just switched to the webinar audio. Oh yeah, apparently phone was potentially an issue. Okay, so we will check the recording afterwards and make sure that that's still good. But a lot of people are saying that the issue seems to have resolved itself.
Okay. Thank you for that input, folks. Sorry about the audio. If it's on my end, I'll do better.
We did just get an actual question about the training. Do you require Q&P for contracts before award always?
Yes.
And that was it for questions.
Okay. All righty, moving right along. Okay, we are finally at the meat of this training where we can talk about your responsibilities for addressing QA when you are planning and managing your work assignments, task orders, or delivery orders. Let me go back to that question. We require quality management plans when dealing with environmental information activities that are mission oriented. We have some activities where we have contracts that do not deal with environmental measurements or environmental information. In those types of contracts, the office who is responsible for those, such as for maintenance contracts or other contracts, such as for training contracts, they may decide that they need other, quote, quality assurance measures other than a quality management plan. Sorry about that. I had to think about it for a little bit. Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about your responsibilities for addressing QA when you are planning and managing your work assignments, task orders, or delivery orders. I'll begin this section with a graphic that shows the components in the final phase, the contract award and implementation phase of the contract acquisition and implementation process. Once again, note that the green bubbles refer to places in which QA needs to be addressed during the process. The first of these green bubbles is handled by your QA officer, or QAO, and contract level core, or CL core. The remaining green bubble is handled by you with assistance and oversight from your quality assurance officer or coordinator, and we'll discuss your roles and responsibilities and how to address them in this next group of slides. Just to check in, how is the audio going? Are we okay, Elizabeth?
We're okay from my end, and I have no other comments that there's any issues.
Okay. It's critical to understand that from a QA perspective, contract award is only the beginning. As I've mentioned previously, nearly all of our contracts involve activities that fall within the scope of our quality system. Our quality system is applied at both the organizational and project level, so QA requirements must be considered for every work assignment, task order, delivery order that involves environmental information or environmental technology. Even if you determine that the work to be performed under your work assignment, task order, or delivery order does not fall within the scope of our quality policy, you still need to prepare a quality assurance review form that documents that determination. And your QAO or QAC needs to sign the form to document their concurrence. If you determine that your work assignment, task order, delivery order does fall within the scope of our quality policy, then you'll need to determine what type of QA strategies are needed and document those strategies on the quality assurance review form. You'll also have to translate those strategies into the specific instructions or requirements that the contractor will see in the work assignment task order delivery order and can respond to it. Finally, you'll need to make sure that an approved quality assurance project plan is in place. That means signed by all the people who need to sign it before work begins, and then follow up to verify that it is being implemented as planned. As a core for an OW work assignment or task order, you are responsible for preparing a quality assurance review form to support your project. When doing so, you'll need to document the QA strategies for your project on the form. If you're not sure about how to select those strategies, consult with your QAO or QAC, and we'll talk a bit more about this shortly, so stay tuned. You also are responsible for translating the QA strategies that you documented on your QARF into narrative requirements within the body of your task order or work assignment. This is important because the QARF is an internal form used to communicate strategies within EPA. The contractor never sees the quality assurance review form, and if you don't use the PWS to tell them what they need to do, it won't get done. Once you have completed the quality assurance review form and a final draft of your PWS that includes contractor QA requirements for implementing the strategies listed on the QORF, you will need to sign the QORF and route it for approval. In most cases, this means getting your branch chief approval, followed by the QAO or QAC approval, and your signature as the core. However, specific approaches for routing vary among organizations, so ask your QAC if you are not sure. When your QA representative receives the form, he or she will review it and the PWS it supports to confirm the QA strategies are appropriate and clearly written within the PWS. If there are problems, he or she may return it to you with a request for changes. Otherwise, he or she will sign it and return it to you. Once you have fully signed the quality assurance review form, you'll need to route it and the PWS to your CL core for processing within EAS. Please note, CPOD will not process your PWS without a quality assurance review form that has been entered into EAS in the supporting docs. You'll also need to provide your quality assurance coordinator with the final versions of both the PWS and the quality assurance review form so that he or she can upload it into the QA tracking system. I do have to say that for task orders, this is an emerging challenge. QA tracks work assignments, task orders, and delivery orders and contracts by individual numbers. For task orders, those identifying numerical identifiers do not get assigned right away and may take up to 2 months to be assigned. So please keep this in mind and make sure that your quality assurance coordinator or other QA personnel are informed of the updated task order number when the task order is issued. Your QA responsibilities as a core don't end with the quality assurance review form. Once the work assignment task order delivery order has been issued, you'll need to verify that all required QA planning documents and other pre-work quality assurance is acceptable and fully approved before work begins. This includes implementing any pre-award audits, performance evaluations, or other types of competency assessments noted on the form. It also includes reviewing and approving any required QAPs or equivalent documentation, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. After work has commenced, you'll need to monitor the contractor's activities to ensure that the QA plans are being implemented throughout the performance of the work. This includes reviewing all contractor deliverables to ensure that they are of acceptable quality and reviewing any required QA reports submitted during the period of performance. We'll talk a bit more about QA reporting options and recommendations shortly. I'm going to stop here because as a core, you are going to receive invoices for work that is performed by your contractor monthly. And as part of that, there should be a QA report that is submitted along with the progress report. Once you review that progress report and the QA progress report and approve the invoice, you have approved the QA work and the technical work that has been performed. Please understand that. I want you to know that your contracting officer at CPOD is your friend. If you have any issues whatsoever with approving an invoice, you need to talk to your CL Core, your branch chief, and your contracting officer. Your contracting officer can help you with any issues that get revealed during this review process. Please keep that in mind. Your contracting officer is your friend and can help you. Finally, you need to provide the CL Core with an annual assessment of contractors' performance. This is called CPARS. If you have a multi-year project, it's very important that you do the CPARS, the annual reviews, because Cincinnati will not process your next work assigned task order or delivery order until you have evaluated the previous year's work by the contractor. The evaluation categories in the CPARS are periodically revised, but as of now, they include quality of the contractor's products or services, cost control, timeliness of performance, and business relations. Note that this is a key place where the quality assurance surveillance plan that we talked about earlier comes into play. Remember, this was a document prepared by your program office during the acquisition planning phase to define the procedures and metrics that cores will use to evaluate contractor performance. This completes the loop by doing your CPARS. We talked a bit about quality assurance review forms earlier in this training from a broad perspective, so let's take a closer look now at exactly what they are designed to do and what you need to know when completing one. QA review forms or QARFs are internal forms that convey information to managers, quality assurance officers, QACs, and QCOs. They are not actually used for review in the normal context. Instead, their primary function is to establish and document project-specific QA requirements. This includes documenting whether the work is subject to the quality system, and if yes, the quality assurance planning documentation, QA reporting, and QA oversight strategies that will be applied for the project. In some instances, your contracting officer will look at the quality assurance review form and trace it back to what is in your PWS to make sure that the QARF reflects exactly what your PWS intends it to reflect. Previously, the EPAG allows organizations to tailor quality assurance review forms to better suit their unique needs. The EPAG contains a 4-page version that is designed for both contract acquisition planning and contract implementation planning, and use of the form requires knowing what parts to skip when. OW has divided the form into 2 separate versions, one for contract acquisition planning and one for contract implementation planning. The OW form for use with work assignments, task orders, and delivery orders is provided as a handout and is available on the OWQA SharePoint site, and it is now fillable. Some offices within OW also have developed their own versions of these forms. These also should be posted on the OWQA SharePoint site as well. If you're not sure which version to use, consult your quality assurance coordinator. Regardless of the specific format used, all variations to the quality assurance review form used for work assignments, delivery orders, and task orders share common elements. These include some basic descriptive information about the contract, the work that will be done, the work will be done under, and the specific work assignment, delivery order, and task order that the form is supporting. It also includes that cores indicate whether the work assignment, delivery order, task order will involve any work that falls within the scope of our quality policy. If the answer is no, no other information is needed. CORS can just sign the form and route it for approval. This does happen on occasion, so don't lose heart. However, if the answer is yes, CORS are required to document the type of QAP required or other quality documentation, the type and frequency of quality assurance reporting required, the type of quality assessments that will be performed either pre or post award. And we'll talk a bit more about each of these options in a few slides. Finally, there's a brief note on the importance of the QORF approvals. The QORF must be signed by the core, the branch chief, and the QA representative. The QAC signs after everyone else for the task orders or work assignments and for solicitations. The quality assurance coordinator signs right after legal review to ensure QA requirements have not been misrepresented or misinterpreted. Okay. A basic quality assurance project plan is the traditional or default type of quality assurance project plan applied to a specific project or activity. A programmatic or contract level QAP, for some organizations call this a PQAP, can be used when you have a diverse mission umbrella type contract consisting of multiple projects with different activities. The generic QAP identifies all the activities that may be performed under the contract and specifies basic QA requirements for each activity. And the specific tasks issued under this contract may require supplemental quality assurance project plans. Supplemental QAPs are project-specific QA plans for each applicable project addressing QA requirements at the work assignment task order level and supplementing the generic QAP or PQAP, and may be addressed via QA plan sections of a work plan or a separate QAP. There can always be equivalent documents. Note that the QA surveillance plans are not equivalent to QAPs. A QASP is developed and applied by EPA or other governmental agency, and it defines procedures and metrics EPA will use to evaluate contractor performance in its annual CPARS reviews. In contracts, a QAP is developed and applied by the contractor, and it defines the management roles, responsibilities, and procedures the contractor will take to meet the quality standards required in the contract or work assignment task order delivery order. When considering the type of QAP you need for the project, you also should consider the type of work being done and how it will be used. EPA's default QAP format, the one specified in R5, was designed when most EPA projects involve field sampling and laboratory analysis activities. The elements in that format are highly focused on that type of data gathering, but are not as well suited to other uses. For example, many projects involve the use of existing data. In such situations, you had no control over the design or implementation of that data gathering, so you need to verify it is both relevant to your needs and of sufficient quality to support your needs. You also may need to use an alternate format that is better suited towards documenting your QA strategies for this type of project. We'll discuss one option a bit later in this training. Finally, when evaluating your QAP needs, you'll need to consider whether the work is being done under a newly awarded contract or an existing contract. If you are planning a follow-on work assignment, task order, delivery order under an existing contract, then it's likely that there was a QAP has already been written and approved for the predecessor work. If so, examine the new PWS to see if it involves any new work that was not covered under the previous QAP. If the answer is no, then the QAP should be reviewed and, if necessary, revised to reflect any changes to criteria, procedures, or key personnel. Even if you are working on a new work assignment, task order, or delivery order, as opposed to a follow-on one under an existing contract, the odds are high that a PQAP may have been written and fully approved. In such cases, you should review the PQAP to see if it is sufficient for your needs or can be supplemented with an SQAP where additional detail is needed. It can be used for initial work while an SQAP or traditional QAP is being developed. Last but not least, if your project is relying on a QAP that approved for use in a previous work assignment or task order, your PWS should cite the QAP title and identify the contract and work assignment or task order number it was approved under and clearly state that it is applicable to the activities under the PWS. If your PWS includes additional work that is not covered by the previous QAP, you'll need to state that in the PWS and instruct the contractor to amend the QAP to address those new activities. Although the quality assurance review form includes an option for omitting QA reporting requirements, the OW quality system team strongly discourages this practice. QA reporting is one of the several tools CORs can use to manage the quality of their contracted services and products. As with nearly all project level QA, the specific choice should reflect the needs of the project at hand. Our default recommendation is to require contractors to report on their ongoing QA/QC activities as part of their already required monthly technical progress reports. This type of monthly reporting supports ongoing surveillance of the contractor performance as a QA assessment strategy. Finally, CORs need to consider and document on their QORF any strategies they'll use for assessing the quality of the contractor services or deliverables. If the contractor will be providing field or laboratory services, these assessment strategies must include verification of contractor competency before any field or lab work begins. This is needed to satisfy requirements in EPA's policy to assure competency of organizations generating environmental measurement data under agency-funded acquisitions. I have included that policy as a handout for you today. Such pre-work competency assessments are a form of readiness reviews, which is one of several types of assessment strategies available to OW CORs. Other examples include surveillance, as noted on the previous slide, independent peer review, product reviews such as data inspection, software testing, reviews of contractor submitted deliverables, and audits, including lab audits, field audits, and quality system audits. Additional information about these assessment strategies is available in the OWQMP. Your QAO and QAC also can provide guidance in selecting appropriate strategies. This is just a graphic of how generally the QAP review process and approval will flow. You can look at this at your leisure. I'm not going to go into much detail here. We can't emphasize enough that CORs and branch chiefs have an obligation to closely examine the QAP to make sure it will meet their needs. You cannot count on the QAC to understand the technical details of your projects. For example, consider that a QAP may include a map that shows the location of field activities. A QAC might reasonably determine that to be acceptable, even if the map indicates they are focusing on an area that's of little concern to EPA. There's no way that the QAC can know details about every project that comes through their organizations. It is incumbent on the WACOR or TOCOR, who is managing the project, to check the technical accuracy and suitability of the QAP. A QAC may be able to note that a QAP involving analysis of samples for organic compounds does not include the spikes to estimate the recovery of compounds in each sample, but a COR with a chemistry background or their technical lead is in the best position to comment on the specific surrogate spike compounds that should be used, or if an isotope dilution technique in which labeled isotopes are spiked into each sample is worth using to provide better information about compound recovery. We'll spend a bit more time on this topic, but we'll not delve into it in detail because we have a separate course on reviewing QAPs. and all OW cores are required to take this course. The goal of the QAP review is to ensure that the contractor has considered all aspects of the project and verify they have all their ducks in a row. Don't be a bean counter. The goal of the review is not to find fault, is to identify legitimate problems that may prevent the project from achieving its goals. A QA review check sheet can help keep your review organized and help you keep track of all the elements that need to be addressed in a QAP. It cannot help you evaluate the quality of the elements that are there, however. This is the first of 3 slides that provide examples of good versus bad QAP language. We have also provided these examples as a separate handout, so we don't expect you to read the slide on the screen. Simply citing and defining the park elements isn't sufficient. For instance, don't give us the definition of precision. Tell us what the precision is expected. For instance, analytical precision will be measured through matrix spike duplicate samples. And it continues on. Please review these slides. The next several slides have good information for you to consider and when reviewing your QAPs, to make sure that there is enough specificity, that the QAPs are in the active voice, and that there is a revision history page associated with all QAPs that will be used through multiple phases and stages of projects. Many of our projects in the Office of Water span several years, and the different stages that a project goes through should be captured in the revision history page. Before we move into our last part of the training, I'd like to talk about a few special circumstances. Usually OW cores are managing work that is performed under OW contracts, but this is not always the case. Sometimes we use contract vehicles that are issued by other EPA organizations. Sometimes we use contract vehicles issued by other federal agencies, like the GSA scheduled contracts are a good example of this. And of course, the reverse can be true. Other EPA organizations and other federal agencies. Sorry about that. So other EPA organizations and other federal agencies may buy into our OW contracts. In OW, we apply a follow the money principle, in which the contract QA strategy should be determined by the organizations that is funding the work, regardless of the vehicle used to procure it. For example, if an OW core is buying into another EPA organization's contract, the OW core should request any contract level QA documentation that exists for that contract, such as the QMP or a PQAP. Such requests are usually made through the other program office's CL core, but the OW core may also work with the other program office's QA officer to obtain these materials. Once the OW core has obtained these materials, he or she should review them just as they would for any OW contract. Determine whether additional QA planning documentation is needed, document those needs, and route the quality assurance review form to their OWQAC. The OWQAC will sign off on the quality assurance review form and return it to the Corps. The OW Corps should provide the other program office with a courtesy copy so that their contract file is complete. If the Office of Science and Technology is buying into another contract for the work that we do, me as the quality assurance officer would work with the TOCOR or WACOR for the QA strategies to be performed, and I would sign on that quality assurance review form. When another organization is buying into an OW contract, the other organization's core and QA officer or designee are responsible for determining QA requirements for their work. What happens if the other program office does not want any QA requirements for their buy-in work assignment? The CL core is responsible for ensuring that all cores using their contract understand contract requirements. Any waivers to requirements are processed by the contracting officer through the CL core. The waiver approval process for elimination or reduction of any QA requirements should include the responsible OWQA officer. Okay, this is the final quiz. The contractor must submit a QMP with each work assignment, task order, delivery order, true or false? This is usually false. Contractors are required to submit a QMP before contract award for any contract that exceeds $650,000 or for contracts in which at least 15% of the activities are subject to EPA's quality system. These two requirements apply mean that virtually all OW contracts require contractors to submit a QMP before award. Remember, the QMP is an umbrella document that covers all work assignments. Therefore, a QMP is submitted once, unless it is revised. After that, QAPs are submitted to support work assignments or equivalently issued documents under the contract. If a contract level QAP or PQAP was submitted and is part of the contract proposal at award, no further QA documentation is necessary. True or false? Well, it depends. This is a trick question. Each core must review the generic contract programmatic QAP to determine if it meets the specific needs of his or her work assignment, task order, delivery order. If not, the core must specify additional requirements in the PWS and QORF, such as supplemental QA documentation or a project-specific QAP. Third question. If a contractor already has an approved QAP in place for a work assignment, task order, delivery order, the contractor must review and, if appropriate, revise and resubmit the QAP to support a follow-on work assignment, task order, or delivery order. True or false? This is true. Existing QAPs should be examined and updated at least annually. OW cores should explicitly require this in their PWS. Last question. If another EPA program office buys into an OW contract, the other office must adhere to OW's quality system. True or false? This is another trick question. Each EPA program office is responsible for ensuring that work funded by that program office complies with that program office's QMP. Therefore, the other program office must review the contract-specific QA documentation to determine if it meets their needs, and if not, must specify additional QA requirements. Okay. Before we end today's training, I'd like to point you to a suite of reference materials that provide more in-depth information about the material we've talked about today. First, all of you should explore OW's QA SharePoint site. Most importantly, this site includes a copy of the OW QMP, which documents our quality system and provides further details regarding our QA system implementation. The site also includes a library of policies, procedures, forms, and guidance. Although I mentioned these earlier, I don't think it hurts to remind you that the Office of Mission Support, formerly OEI's Enterprise Quality Management Division, has published a series of documents that provide requirements and guidance concerning QAPs and QMPs. These documents are all available to the public on EQMD's website and include the following: EPA QAR2, EPA QAR5, and QAR5 implements EPA's data quality policy, and as I mentioned, a series of G5 guidance documents. And check out Chapter 5, the Quality Assurance Project Plans, in the EPA Quality Manual. There are other websites. For the FEM website, the Forum on Environmental Measurement. Region 1 has some excellent materials, not only for QA modeling, but also for existing data QAPs. And there's also guidance on the development, evaluation, and application of environmental models. There are non-EPA guidance sources, such as OMB standards and guidelines for statistical surveys, or the U.S. Census Bureau's quality standards. So we're almost finished. Hang in there. Okay, the quality system is not optional. Nearly everything we do in EPA and in the Office of Water deals with environmental data, one way or another. Data from field studies, from published literature and surveys and other sources, models that we use or have developed applications for, statistical and economic analyses, and environmental technology. I'd like to mention here about models that several of our contractors have proprietary models that we utilize. You need to understand the proprietary nature of the models that you are using. And you also need to understand any licensing restrictions associated with either use of models or other databases that we may acquire. Please remember that most of our information must be made available to the public, and it must be transparent and reproducible. All data, regardless of the source, must be of known and documented quality. And as CORS, you are the captain of your ship. You are in charge. Please remember that. You now know what is required regarding QA in the contracting and are responsible for getting it done. For planning for QA, for documenting your plans on the QORF, for obtaining management and QAO approval of your plans, that you mustn't start work without a signed quality assurance project plan in place, and you have to verify the plans are implemented. You should also monitor implementation and quality throughout the contractor performance. Remember I mentioned about approval of invoices? Please pay attention to that. And consult your quality assurance officer, QAC, for guidance as needed. Okay, I think we're done. Any questions?
Yes, we do have a few questions that have come in. The first one is, do you follow a similar process with QARF and PWS or SOW for non-contract actions such as cooperative agreements, IAs, grants, etc.?
Yes, it follows the same general process.
Okay, the next question is, if a task arises that wasn't expected when the QAP was written, do you need to adjust the documentation, or does the QA get approved when you approve the monthly contractor invoice?
The idea is to get, if you have a task that was unforeseen, lots of times it happens, you just do an addenda to the quality assurance project plan and get that addenda approved, and make sure it's contained in the revision history for that quality assurance project plan. It's not hard.
The next question is a QARF needed for the purchase of equipment or instruments or maintenance and services, even though those items do not involve the collection, use, evaluation of environmental data?
Maybe. It depends on for instance, if you are purchasing equipment for a laboratory, you will have quality specifications that equipment must meet, and they should be expressed in the PWS or some kind of requirement summary for that document. And the requirement summary may satisfy the requirements for QA documentation.
Okay, the last question here is, do you have a QAP review checklist that you can share?
Of course we do. But again, let me just say, the QAP review checklist is on the OW QA SharePoint site. But if you are not an OW staffer, if you send me an email, I will send you the checklist, or I'll share it from the SharePoint site for you. And but once again, let me just emphasize that all the checklist does is say that you've met the formatting requirements of for R5. It doesn't say whether the content is good or specific enough or has the details that are required for good quality assurance and quality control. But I'll be glad to share it with you. There is also a quality management plan checklist that we use as well in contracting that is also available on the OWQA SharePoint site.
Okay, and the next question is, does EPA ORD have a separate and different QA/QC policy for their QAPs that they develop that is different and significantly different requirements than OW's QA/QC policy, etc., recognizing that both OW and ORD still fall under the federal QA/QC requirements under FAR?
So I have seen the some of the quality documents that ORD produces, and they are very similar. But remember, ORD does research, whereas in the Office of Water, we do applied science. So our emphasis may be different, but I believe the processes are pretty much the same, and we all follow R5. Hope that helps.
Okay, we did have a final question about the looking for the link to, oh, and there's a follow-up here. Hold on, I'm scrolling back up. There's a link, somebody was looking for a link to the SharePoint site, so I'm going to answer that directly. And the next question is a follow-up. Hold on, I'm scrolling down to see the whole question. Follow-up, but the purchase of a piece of instrument is different than use of instrument, which definitely has QA requirements. It's like buying office supplies. That purchase itself is not collecting or using environmental data. You buy a piece of equipment that meets your needs. Don't think you can write a QAP for that, question mark.
Oh, I agree on that. That's why I said there might be a requirements document with specifications that will, basically does the same thing. But it's not, you are correct. It is not dealing with environmental information or data. It's a different animal.
Okay. Okay, and that is it for the questions. I'm going to send out, seems a number of people are looking for the link to the QA SharePoint site. I'm going to hit send all, so everyone should be able to see that link in a moment. Another question, how often, okay, I'm not quite sure I understand this question. How often or does litigants get copies of EPA's QAPs?
So the quality assurance project plans become part of the record for the development of our projects, and especially for the development of our regulations. And QAPs are part of the formal record. As part of the Information Quality Guidelines, the Data Quality Act, all of our information has to be made public. It has to be transparent and reproducible. And it has to have gone through a process that is robust enough and rigorous enough for us to have evaluate the usefulness of the information for whatever we intend to use it for. All of that process kind of work needs to be included in the record, the formal record for the project. Did that answer the question? Hello?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, it did answer the question, and the only other comments were a few people were asking for the link to the QA SharePoint site, which I did send out to them.
Okay, I will be retiring on October 1, and my last day in the office is September 30th. I will continue to answer questions up until that time, but I have to turn in my computer on that day. So if you have any further questions, please get them to me and I will try to respond to them. Otherwise, Joe Beeman, God love him, he's taking over my work in the Office of Science and Technology once I leave. So you can send any questions to him.
There was one final question that just came in. Who is responsible for getting IQGs cleared?
In the Office of Water, it is the responsible, there is a process in the Office of Water. And if you are going to be disseminating any information, whether putting it up on a website, sending it out to the general public, you must complete, you as the project officer must complete an influential IQG checklist, which must be supported by text, not just check the box, yes, 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 yes. You must explain on that form. I think there are 7 elements that you have to address on there. And that gets signed by your division director, and then it gets sent to the Information Quality Guidelines officer, who is currently Miriam Wiggins Lewis on the AA staff. Let me just say that if you have followed all of the quality system activities that I've gone through today, and with your PWS and your QA review forms and your QAPs and the QMPs, generally that the influential checklist for IQGs is a piece of cake.
No other questions.
Okay, that checklist can be found also on the OWQA SharePoint site. All right then. Thank you very much. As my second to last training, this has been enjoyable, and I'm sorry for any audio difficulties. And please feel free to send me an email with any follow-up questions that you have. Have a good day.